Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Cadence Independent Media Production. So if you're new to the series, here we talk about sound and tone and hacks for getting different tones and also busting some myths where we find them, that kind of thing. Today we are exploring a hack that is brand new to me for getting rid of that basketball-y sound that you sometimes get in your kick mic. Today, we are talking about bass drum sounds that can get a little kind of plasticky sounding and a little bit basketball-y sounding. Sometimes people describe it that way, especially when you're dealing with drums that are ported front head and maybe have minimal muffling inside of the drum or maybe even no muffling. This is a cool sound, and it can be a little bit tricky sometimes to get it to do what we imagine it's going to do. Particularly when it comes to being used to either a padded drum with a port or an unported drum with minimal muffling like felt strips, things like that. As always, thankful to our presenting sponsor, ProMark by D'Addario, for helping us out. This is a brand new hack for me that actually was mentioned to us on the internet. We've read about it some other places. It appears to be associated a little bit with certain producers and also with the drummer Simon Phillips, if anybody's ever checked him out. He's a guy who also doesn't like a ton of muffling inside of his bass drums. If you've ever watched videos, there's usually rolled up towels, like gaff tape to the bottoms of the heads. It's not like a big blanket or anything like that in there. The Simon Phillips fable goes that the producer told him to put a paint can inside of it, like a full can of paint, and then that was moved over to a can of sand because paint in your drum, I mean, there's risks there. And then we have gone over to specifically a sandbag because it's kind of easy to handle, and we're talking about a similar kind of weight thing, but compared to a can where you're going to need to stabilize it in some sort of way, it's going to roll around or tip over, this just lays nicely sort of in the cup of the bottom of the bass drum. The sandbag we have is 15 pounds. We only have 15-pound sandbags at the studio here, so that's what we're working with. Of course, like, your results may vary if you use a 10 or a 5, or if your bass drum is a different size than this 22. Anything could happen, but the nifty thing is we're not using any adhesives, we're not cutting up heads, we're not doing anything crazy. Just put it in there, put your front head back on. If it's a little sandbag, you might be able to get it through the hole. These were too big for that. We tuned the drum basically exactly the same. I had to take the front head off, but I put it back where it was. So what you're going to hear is strictly the effect of the sandbag. Same kind of playing, same beater on the bass drum, same heads, all of that stuff. This drum right now has an EMAD batter, and it also has a EQ3 reso that we cut a port in a couple of weeks ago. It's a little bit bigger than stock. It's a 6-inch port, and it sounds pretty good. It also lets a lot of air out, which is going to be promoting that basketball-y issue. The EMAD front head with the 4-inch port that's padded a little bit, it gives you a little more thump and doesn't sort of project that component quite as much. For mics today, we're using our trusty AKG D112 in the hole, which is sort of as common as it gets. And in the hole where the air's escaping, you're really going to capture that basketball-y stuff if it's in there. The other mic is a ribbon microphone. It's a KAM R3. And if you want to hear how that mic is involved in this, head over to the Patreon where you can hear that mic and a bunch of other ones that we also included in this for some little demos and things like that. So before we delve into these sounds, it's important to note, to me at least, that when this was spoken about to us and when we researched it on the internet a little bit, people talked about a lot of different things that this was supposed to do. They said things like lowering the pitch of the drum. They said things like making it more punchy or more microphone friendly, whatever that means. That can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. What we did is basically we tried to get the drum sounding good without it, but still, it's got that kind of zingy thing in the batter head. And then we just put it in there to see what would happen. And as you'll see, a lot of stuff happened. Some was expected and some was not expected at all. Also, of course, if you're interested, please head over onto our Patreon account to check out additional content about all this stuff. There's videos, there's going to be anecdotes about this, there's going to be other stories, and a lot more just playing in general. All right, so that's what that sounds like. I've had that kind of sound in the studio many times and had to modify things to get the batter head to behave and the drum to generally behave all over. And it does feel like there's no muffling in it. The batter head has a lot of sort of movement to it. Burying the beater doesn't feel great. So yeah, now we're going to throw that thing inside of there and we'll see what happens. So it's a lot different, and it's a lot different in a bunch of different ways. From player perspective, starting with the feel, the batter head feels stiffer and more reboundy than it did before, and it's easier to play fast. I found myself syncopating the groove a little bit more unintentionally because it was easier to play a little fast stuff. Hitting it hard feels better too. It's a more substantial feeling to just like really smack it, which I wasn't expecting. But the big surprise was it really wiped out a lot of that basketbally zingy thing in the kick mic, which is such a hassle sometimes with certain drums, certain head combinations, and certain tunings. And we've talked about this in the past, and we've fussed around with it a little bit. This, for me, is the most direct change I've ever seen with a simple kind of hack like this, to just grab a sandbag, which, especially if you're in the studio, which is where you'd most likely be doing this, there's going to be sandbags around someplace for the mic stands and for just stabilizing things in general. Incredible difference right out of the gate. And I can see a lot of opportunities in studio situations and in a lot of styles where this is a incredibly quick thing you can do if you know that you need this sound to go from sound A to sound B immediately and not waste anybody's time. You know, time is money, and you got to get that sound as fast as you can, you know. As an aside, if you're finding yourself in a large hall and this is something that seems like it might be helpful to you, there's also usually weights on stage to, like, you know, hold the rigging in place or to like keep a curtain out of the way, that kind of thing. And if you have a little towel, or if you're already got like a small pillow in there or an EQ pad or something like that, to, you know, have like metal on wood, it's actually not that tricky to find something like that. That had not occurred to me. That was something that Ben was talking about earlier. And it also brings to mind times in the past that I've seen or have personally used something heavy to stabilize muffling device in the drum so that it doesn't move around. And it only occurs to me now that that weight was affecting the sound. It wasn't just the pillow that was in there that I put that thing on there to make it stay. You know, I remember putting a brake drum in there one time, and the brake drum is pretty heavy. So, you know, it's going to have an effect, especially on a resonating body that's laying on its side like this. Also, as another aside, if you ever find yourself using or have used on you something like a Shure, like a Beta 91A, the flat kind of like plate-shaped microphone. Obviously, you can't have that just sitting on the raw wood of the inside of your bass drum. So, you know, you got to have a towel or something, or a sandbag. It's going to sit on there real nice too. And that's definitely something to think about for sure if you're playing in halls without your own sound guy, but with your drums. Make sure that like you're sort of going to be able to do what they're going to need for the miking, and this is an opportunity to explore that too. Final little thing that's worth thinking about too is a little bit of peace of mind that there's more weight in your drum, which is going to stabilize it a little bit if you're playing really hard. This kind of sound is going to be good for, you know, heavy music, pocket stuff where maybe you're really going to be slamming the drum. And we've all had a bass drum walk away from us at one time or another, even on the best of carpets. You know, like anything can happen. And a little bit of weight in there, I mean, it can't hurt, right? It's going to help it stay in place. It's going to give you a really solid feel when you're really smashing it. Also, we want to give special thanks to Focusrite for helping us out with this new Clarett USB interface that's allowing us to do more channels with better sound on a newer computer and actually have a lot more flexibility with what we make here. And a special thanks to Georgia there for helping us out. If you're interested, all the information about our new signal chain is in the description below this video. So, to sum up, quick hack that has a gigantic effect on your bass drum sound. We always love those, especially when they're cheap. Sandbags are cheap. There are other heavy things you can put in there. Doesn't really matter what it is as long as it's stable. So please let us know if you do this ever. And of course, like, comment, subscribe, and hit that little button next to there so you get our notifications. And thanks again to ProMark by Dario for helping us out. And as I said, please let us know if you know anything about this or what effects you've experienced if you put things inside of your bass drum like this. Because this is the first time that I've done it on purpose to see like what the sound difference was going to be and not just to like hold the pillow in place. Yeah, see you out there.